Welcome. Uh, Welcome to the show. I am Rose Horowitz. I'm a Pulitzer-nominated journalist and the founder of Woman to Follow. And I'm thrilled to welcome Irena Cronin, who is a CEO of Infinite Retina, CEO of Infinite Retina, and Senior Vice President of Product at Dados Technology. I followed Irena's work for years and have watched her navigate the complex intersection of augmented reality, changing AI technologies, and people's everyday use of AI. She's an author of 6 books, including Spatial Computing, an AI-driven business revolution, co-authored by Kathy Hackle, and the Immersive Metaverse Playbook for Business Leaders, which I think she co-authored with Robert Scoble. And she speaks at global conferences, was recently keynote speaker at 2 conferences in Shanghai. Big shout out to my wonderful producer, Stephen Kaplan. I'm so grateful to him for his expertise. And just to give you a quick introduction to Irena, she began her career as a Wall Street analyst, and today she's one of the few women in tech helping companies implement artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and spatial computing for big companies in their businesses. So let's welcome Irena.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Irena. Thanks. So good to have you and great to see you again.
Yes, it's good to see you.
I guess when we met a few years ago, AI was everywhere. Everybody was talking about it, and but it was still pretty new.
Yes.
So could you tell us where, 3 things that are where we are today, 3 things that are new where we are today?
Well, we could start with enterprise. So enterprise use of AI versus consumer.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, there's this new thing now called Agentic AI. It's been around for a while, but it's just starting to pick up in actual business sense. And it's taking something called an agent, which is not only one prompt. Like if you have ChatGPT, you put in a prompt and you get the answer, whatever you put in. Agentic AI takes a lot of different systems and puts them together and has an agent actually do, let's say if you wanted to set up a reservation at a restaurant or book a flight, it could do that for you. And other types of things like that, more serious things for business as well. So that's a really big breakthrough right now for AI. For consumer, the second thing would be the understanding that educational institutes are actually taking AI very seriously. And there are 2 camps. One of the camps is saying AI shouldn't be used at all. And the other one is embracing AI very much and actually including it in their coursework. So that's a second thing. And a third thing that we're going to talk about is women in AI and how this time is a little different, that with startups, with women in startups, actually there's been VC funding, much more than I've seen in a very long time.
That's great to hear. Tell us in your words, since this is like a show for a general audience, what is agentic AI and how is it increasingly being used?
Okay, so I gave you the example of doing a reservation at a restaurant or getting a flight. That's a very easy process that I could go through. So basically, it would actually prompt you to ask questions to you as to what you wanted, what time you want to leave, and then go out and fetch the answers, like these are the available flights, and then come back to you and say, well, what's your price? If you didn't indicate what price you wanted to put it at, go out and fetch what the price is and come back to you and actually go out and suggest that you buy a certain flight. And that's a very, very simple example of an agent. But you can imagine all kinds of other things in larger businesses, what an agent can do. There's a thing called OpenClaw right now, which orchestrates your whole operating system instead of apps, and it goes into your operating system and it agentifies basically the operating system. So let's say it corresponds to your calendaring, to your wishes of traveling or your wishes of appointments or whatever like that. And it coordinates everything together.
So, what's another example besides the airline and travel that you can give, or maybe a simple one that way that businesses are using it?
Okay, I could give you an example of a law firm. So law firms have a lot of data, right? So if you have the system tuned into your actual data, like the data has been fed in, you can ask it all kinds of things. So you have different divisions in a law firm. So basically you would say, I need to have this particular file from this particular, you know, whatever is happening in a particular case. And then I need you to do this with this case, and I need you to send it to operations, and then I need you to send it to accounting, and then I need you to send it here, and I need to have their answers added onto what I receive back. And it's a back and forth thing. So it's replacing a person actually who would be in there to do this for you, which is another interesting thing we could talk about.
Everybody's worried about, the AI replacing our jobs, and a lot of tech companies have said I think Meta just recently said they were laying off 10% of its workforce.
Yeah.
And yet I read that other people say, well, this is not necessarily the impact of AI, but those layoffs come under the umbrella of AI because that's sort of the trend and people are talking about it.
Right. These are really early days for businesses. It's a little bit of a shock to the system because it's starting to be implemented and things are really actually speeding up with the types of services that AI is providing right now. And businesses, of course, are behind with understanding of how AI it should be used and could be used. So you have all the major consulting companies helping companies figure out what to do, Deloitte Consulting and just all of them actually in there. And it's the people that are being let go, I would say, is not directly attributable to AI. It has to do with maybe the type of people that are being let go, like the really people who have pretty easy jobs. Maybe they're being let go.
Such as like what would be
Who do like assistants that produce slides.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And book do calendaring and stuff like that. That you could easily replace an assistant with using Agentic AI right now with no problem. But I would say a lot of the stuff that's in the news is actually overblown. Meta is letting go 10% of their workforce because they want to put all their money towards AI. It's not that AI has made the 10%, made them let go 10%. And in other cases, there are companies that I think have blamed AI or given the reason as AI for letting people go, because enterprise really isn't as far as it hasn't taken as far as it could go right now in terms of what's available.
So is that to say that in the next 5-10 years, we'll really see the impact of the lower level jobs being unnecessary?
It's going to go further than that. It's going to move from lower to upper level jobs. There's going to be a whole slew of new types of jobs that will be available that to monitor what the agents are doing, because you can't just leave agents to do, anything when you first give them the task to do. someone has to be in there to see, especially if it's a really big thing that they're doing, someone has to be in there to check to see that it's doing it right, to change the direction of what they're doing if it's doing it wrong. If they're doing harm in some way, like letting go some, private information to people that shouldn't be getting it in the company, stuff like that. So they have to be really careful and monitor what's going on. So that's a new job that doesn't exist right now. So I predict that there'll be a whole bunch of new jobs that will erupt from the use of agentic AI in businesses, especially.
So that will make up for some of these other jobs that will be lost.
Yes, that is true. But it's tough. Of course, there are people that are going to be let go because AI is just absolutely amazing. But we did talk in the past about some of the downfalls of AI, so maybe we could talk about that.
Yeah, there's an article in the New York Times that talked about an older guy who I think either was trained as a neuroscientist or considered himself a neuroscientist.
Yes.
But he was diagnosed with leukemia, and he was very involved in using AI. And AI somehow told him he had, maybe it was Richter's disease or something. And he continued to tell his children who were checking up on him. And one of his children was actually a journalist who had written about a young kid who had taken his life. And, there's a lawsuit about that by, relying on ChatGPT as their, friend and everything. Yeah. So in this case, this older man relied on what AI was telling him, even though he was getting notes from his doctor to get treatment. And it wasn't until I think he couldn't move or his legs swelled so much or something awful that he went for treatment. And by then it was very late to get treatment. And, and the son said, it hastened his, he wasn't able to prolong his life, and it could have hastened his demise, his death.
So for consumer AI, there are a whole bunch of risks that are involved. So the consumer AI does absolutely wonderful things. It gives you all kinds of information. It could give you advice. It could create little slideshows that you want to do for consumers that want to show, to their friends or whatever, stuff like that. It's used in education, or it could be used in education. It could be used for all kinds of informational use. But the downside is that it's really, even though we talked about AI 2 years ago, consumer AI still has problems with what's called guardrails. So guardrails actually are limits that the AI has as to what it can say and do and which direction it could go. And that is not sophisticated enough yet. And in fact, they don't exactly know, people in the industry don't know exactly how to create the guardrails yet. There are
companies doing enough to do that? I guess two questions. Are companies doing enough to do that, to create guardrails, so that possibly, this man somehow wouldn't have relied on the AI, or a child wouldn't rely on a chatbot about their, ways to, when they were so troubled that they were considering suicide. So one is that something companies are doing enough of, the big companies? And two, is there government, we know there's more government regulation of AI in Europe. Are we too slow on the take for that? And should we be doing more?
So for your first question, there are some companies that acknowledge that it's a problem. First, you have to acknowledge that there's an issue, which some companies have not actually really done so. One of the companies that has acknowledged that is Anthropic. So they were actually going to put out a model and they stopped it because they said that there weren't enough guardrails. So they said it's a fantastic model, but we're not going to do it because we want it to be safe for people to use. So that's fantastic. I don't see OpenAI being extremely resourceful in trying to hasten guardrails to come in to their models. Of course, they're working on it, but it doesn't seem to be like their main thing. Their main thing is just to grow and they just came out with model 5.5 recently, which is really good. So, no, I think OpenAI is not doing a great job, and the other ones are kind of in the same boat. Anthropic is far ahead in terms of acknowledgement of these issues that exist. Of course, there are legal issues. There's lots of people going to court, especially you mentioned kids committing suicide over advice that was given to them by a chatbot. And those people are suing, their parents are suing the companies for that. In Europe, you're right, there are more regulations, as there are more regulations about a lot of different things, including other things on the internet. But I wouldn't say that it's understandable yet as to what kinds of legal things have to be done or what kind of laws need to be made to be able to understand the guardrails. I don't think that the law keepers, anyone in law really understands the technology well enough to be able to do the laws yet. I think right now we're at a stage where the companies have to take initiative to fix these problems, and then the law can come in and bolster what, the new initiatives that they have come up with, the new guardrails that they have come up with. So unfortunately, I don't think doing legal things or having laws right now anywhere is really going to change that situation. There's just going to be more and more until the guardrails are more of a reality and it's understood better. There are just going to be law cases and other things happening, unfortunately.
Would you say there's that knowledge, the awareness is growing among AI companies, or is it's very particular, like, so Anthropic? What was the example you're talking about with Anthropic? I think I remember reading about it, but what was the example of data of what they didn't release because they thought it could be
it was just a model, a particular model that they were about to release. So it was all ready to go, and they just held back on it. So I think that's spectacular to do something like that and actually make it public. To make it public is a nice way of saying, we do care, we do recognize that there are problems that still need to be addressed. And they gave no date as to when they would put out the model. So yeah, the way that it's being addressed. So we talked also in the past about philosophers being recruited by companies to understand, how models should be structured, what the limits are, the ethics of certain things. And that's actually really very much needed. And people might say, oh, that's just, liberals, just just liberals or whatever, just going in there, trying to soften things up or whatever.
Or somebody wanting to be called philosopher. Or,
yeah.
Oh no,
these people are very serious. I've known a few people who've actually been recruited that were already professors in universities or have already worked at some other AI companies in the past. So they have a lot of experience with this.
What would their education be? Would it be?
It's a PhD. They would get a PhD in philosophy. So basically, you need these people to give some kind of information and give some advice as to how the model should be put out to the public. But not only that, they need to have safety people, what's called safety people, working for the company. Some of them are philosophers, some of them are not. And those are the people that actually work with the guardrails. So I know that companies have increased safety in their companies, the amount of people that work there. in this particular area, which is a must. But people are not going to really be taught, the business people are not going to talk too much about safety because there's a lot of legal issues around it. So it's kind of like a catch-22 for them. If they say, oh, we've hired this many people and we really care about it, and then there's a lawsuit that happens because some other thing happened. So it's kind of, not a secret thing, but something that the companies aren't talking about too much.
But I assume from what you're saying, we will see companies doing that more.
Yes, seriously so. Because there might be some people that even say, ChatGPT shouldn't even be around, right? Because of these particular issues that have happened around safety. So the more conservative you are, the more careful you would be with putting out models. But that's not the case. Like I said, OpenAI rushes to put stuff out, and then something happens, and then they have to address it.
So the big picture, it seems, is that companies are all racing to be the first in creating these tools, cutting edge tools, and the backup. The people ask, they're less apt to have the people there making sure, asking the questions, which is, philosophy. What does a philosopher do, right? Ask questions, as you said, advice. And so that seems to be, that's a scary thing, I think, for most people, that they're thinking, okay, well, they're racing to develop this. And I know we're in a race with China, and, it's become a, national security issue. And there's nothing that's going to change that race. But if you see the example of companies like Anthropic holding back on something they see as so dangerous, will that be, a precursor to more companies doing that?
I would hope so. I mean, for regular everyday people, consumers, I mean, it runs the gambit of people, let's say parents who are really worried about it, who won't let their kids use AI at all. For example, I was reading on X a week ago about a 7-year-old that was basically using ChatGPT all the time for information, for advice, for educational purposes. And the parents were appalled by it and restricted her to never use AI, which is a mistake in my point of view. There has to be some kind of, like I said, monitoring would be good. If a parent could monitor how they're using the AI, that would be nice. However, when the comments that I read on X were basically very hateful of these parents. So on X, you get the technologists and all the AI people who are really gung-ho on it, and they were just putting her down like you wouldn't believe. But I think,
but you can liken it to when kids get phones, cell phones.
Yeah, it's the same thing. You have to make a decision, like how aggressive you're going to be with it. So I'd say consumers are a little more careful with the use of AI, unless you have these cases that we talked about where it really goes into bizarre directions and bad things happen, versus enterprise. Enterprise, you get a whole bunch of consultants in there, and they are taking care of issues that might pop up. And you do people who do monitor things, and maybe something wrong happens and they catch it. And so there's a lot of monitoring going on. But with consumers, and even with education, how kids are using it in education, there's not a lot of monitoring going on. So, something should be done. There should be some norms set up as to how consumers actually use AI. I think that will happen in the future.
Yeah, you talked about the divide between professors, and universities using it to plan their coursework, and what might have taken them 2 days to plan can take them, a half hour. And that's not necessarily a bad thing if they can use that time to meet more with students. In journalism, you can think of examples where AI can be used so that a reporter can have more time, in
Sure.
investigating stories, or calling people, going out in the street. But so it seems like for consumers, they have to rely more on their own guardrails.
Yeah. Yeah, you could say that, because for education, the professors would have to get the okay from the universities to be able to do this. Otherwise, they might be in jeopardy for their jobs. There are universities that don't allow the use of AI for many instances. So they wouldn't allow a professor to put together a whole day's work or a whole lesson using AI. That would not be acceptable to the university. You have particular professors who don't want AI to be used at all in their classes, so they do everything in class. So
For example, like the return of the blue books, for people who don't know, but
everything written
when
with
you write,
hand.
yes.
No computers, nothing like that. So that's one way of dealing with it, but I think that's gonna lose in the end. I think AI is gonna win in the end. So the universities that are more accepting of the use of AI, are the ones that are the forefront of how it's going to be, and better figure out how to use it, because it's not going away.
Okay, thank you. You really shed a light on the different uses and the guardrails and where we're going. I wanted to ask you in terms of where we are with women in AI, because right now, globally, women account for only 22% of the workforce of people working in AI. And that, I kind of checked in the last few years, that number really hasn't changed. But you've talked about some ways, what are some ways that will change, and what can we hope hope for change in that women will be more represented?
Well, AI is an emergent thing, even though it's been around for a couple of years, and even though it's moving so fast, it's constantly emerging, and it's pretty much a new thing in terms of, if you look at computer science, how long ago computer science started versus, where AI is right now in terms of timing. So unfortunately, for these more emergent kind of things, it's still pretty much the same in terms of the mix between men and women being hired. It's just the way it is. But like I said earlier, I'm seeing a lot of women who are starting companies, and women, I'm saying, 18-year-olds even, starting their own companies and getting funded, which is amazing.
And these women you mentioned, or do they have a certain background, or are they being recruited the way men are, at 18 from big universities?
Well, the ones at 18 are the most brilliant genius ones. So you're either going to be a genius or not. So for both men and women, the ones that started coding when they were like 8 years old, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But for the university ones, unless they've dropped out, which then you have to be a little bit of genius too to be hired. There are people who have a computer science background. I don't think computer science is going to go away as much as everybody thinks. I think you need to have a certain understanding, maybe the topics that are taught, maybe the way coding is being done when you get a computer science degree, or what you learn as you code will change, because you could use AI to fill in the code for you. But then you have to understand what the AI is doing. Unless you're a newbie, somebody who doesn't understand computer science at all, or know how to code, and you're trying to build a program, you could build a program using AI, but it won't be something amazing. It'll be something pretty simple. So of course, in businesses, technology businesses, they're not looking for people to do simple things. They want people to understand the extent of what the AI is doing and actually manage it. So those people who are managing are going to be the ones in the future that are going to grow in companies. And that's a particular area that I think women and men could have an entry point to be hired to be the managers of AI coding. But they, like I said, they have to have some background. Yeah.
Well, I just want to, I don't know if I did it before, but I just want to thank my producer, Stefan Kaplan, for the great work he does. And shout out to Stefan. And I also want to acknowledge some of the people, Paula Kiger, who I'm a colleague with, is joining us from Tallahassee. Anne-Marie Arriaga is joining us from Long Island. And we have a few questions, so let's go to the questions. An article in Forbes quoted a CEO who believes that the neurodivergent will fare well in the AI revolution. Any sense of this?
Yes, I do believe that's true. It's if you have someone who started coding when they were like 8, like I said, and they're neurodivergent and they're pretty much into that, like that's their thing, then they will be amazing at it.
Are we talking about somebody who might have something like ADHD and can, focus on, is passionate about, may not, might have some executive functioning issues, but when it comes to something they love, they can focus on that? Is that, what kind of neurodivergences are we talking
someone
about?
on the spectrum, someone on the spectrum.
Okay.
Now there's of course a broad spectrum, but so basically coders right now outside of AI, let's say go back a couple of years, regular everyday computer science people, you don't really need to be that social or understanding of social instances to be able to do extremely well. Of course, you have to meet with your bosses to explain what you're doing, but that's all in, explaining code, and it's explaining how far you've gone in a particular case of code. So that's different than having meetings to discuss softer things and being in meetings all the time, which is not the case for coders. So especially now with AI, I see that even being more. You could be a lone person doing immense things with AI. In fact, there's a lot of companies now which are one-person companies. And I bet you that there's a lot of neurodivergent people that are doing these companies, the one-person companies.
Interesting. Has there been data on that? Like, I'm just curious.
Elon Musk would say, of course, it's true. You don't need data. I haven't seen anything formal about it. It's just my sense out of being in this industry for a while, and meeting tons of people and just understanding how business works and what I've seen. That's how I get my ideas.
Okay. And Anne Arriaga asks, she currently uses ChatGPT primarily for drafting emails and basic tasks. What's the one skill I should learn so I'm not just a user, but an expert at working with AI by next year? Good question. Thank you.
Well, as a consumer right now, it depends on what you want to get done. So if she's doing, I believe it's a woman, doing emails and basic tasks, ChatGPT, as a consumer, you could do so much more. You just have to figure out what it is you want to do. So basically, even if you think ChatGPT can't do something, you should try it. You should type in a prompt and see what happens. that's how a lot of people are learning. That's what ChatGPT actually does and what it can provide for you. So anything that you want to do in the future that is beyond emails and basic tasks, try it out and see how far it gets you. That's what I would say to consumers.
Okay. So as an example, I know we're just, but
sure. So
mhm.
I was working today on something that is called a review. That's something that you review for code before you actually do the coding. Okay. And it's highly technical and it's not meant for everyday users the way that engineers actually write it. So I said, this is not good enough. I'm going to put this all in ChatGPT and ask it to make it easier to understand. And within 2 minutes, I have a whole new document that takes all of that technical stuff, doesn't make mistakes with the technical stuff, and writes a whole new narrative around it. I didn't know it could do that. I didn't think it could do it efficiently. I thought it would make errors or whatever, and it was perfect.
That's great. I see a difference too, and when I prompt, and also less hallucinations and more accuracy. So Anne Marie is saying thank you.
So hallucinations are still around. This is a guard. It's not even something that's really understood about how you could stop hallucinations. Like I talked about guardrails earlier. Yeah, you could put up all kinds of guardrails, but if the AI thinks that it's something that you want to see, it's going to fabricate it. So there was a case about 2 weeks ago of 2 lawyers that were actually being apprehended, not just scolded, but apprehended because they used ChatGPT in many ways for their cases. And the sources that they used were actually fabricated. So they wasted the court's time, 2 weeks court's time with bad sources and bad information. So, yeah.
And I think the judge, I don't know, what did the judge do? Make them refile, or they just, all that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't follow up with it.
I think I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because some people say, things like real estate, law firm, legal firms, will be the first to, will be among the first to embrace AI. But if you're using it to create an argument, you're saying, and the AI is wrong, there's no argument.
Yeah. Now the legal firms are both very excited about using AI and terrified because the risks that they're taking are huge and the benefits that they're taking are huge also. So you have to figure out, how far you want to go using AI in a legal firm and where you should stop. And it's very difficult to figure that out. So they're all trying to figure that out now. There are particular AI companies that cater only to law firms. And they're doing a pretty good job. One is called Harvey, in trying to help law firms to streamline their casework and to figure out how far they should go in the law firms.
Thank you. That's very interesting. But of course, there are tools to do this for lawyers to use instead of just overseeing their work in a way, I guess, right?
Well, I wouldn't say associates are going to disappear for sure. I think there's people who think they will. Oh, you're just a lawyer. There's no associate, and AI does everything. No.
It's like we don't need doctors anymore. It's like
right. I mean, maybe 50. I don't want to even put a year. How many years to it? Because AI is going to change and maybe we'll figure things out. And it might be here sooner than later. But yeah, it's not going to replace doctors anytime soon. Doctors use AI, they use it for uh, documentation of patients. Nurses write down information and it fields the information, funnels it to the right people. That's using Agentic AI. And doctors collect the right information and they get some advice perhaps as to what might be wrong. And the doctor then makes a decision as to whether or not that makes sense, all that kind of stuff. But it's certainly not going to replace anyone like that.
Okay, good to hear. Breathe, everyone can breathe. One of the things you talked about last time, which I thought was intriguing, and I wonder if there's a difference, is that you gave a prompt to, maybe it was ChatGPT, to render, an office, what an office looked like with people at computers. And I think when you did it, it showed all white men sitting at desks. And then when you prompted it to show more diversity, it showed some women, but they were like on balusters, sitting not at the desk looking at the computer screen. What do you think is the difference today?
I think there's actually major differences that are positive, go in a positive direction. The reason why is because AI now has memory. It didn't have a lot of memory before. You just type in your prompts and, then you type in another prompt and it would forget what you did the last time. Now, the idea of AI having memory and understanding what you're looking for and also what other people are inputting and what they're looking for, it adds up all together into the AI coming up with something that's more sensible versus historically what they would have been fed in terms of information. So I'm just thinking that it's because people are actually looking for a more diverse kind of setup that's what it's going to give you versus what it was before, which was pretty hilarious. Actually, it took me over 2 hours to get the right kinds of visuals, which shouldn't have happened.
Have you tried that experiment again recently?
Yes, I have. We did talk about that recently, and I did try it, and it was much better. There were people, now I'm calling them people, men and women, both sitting at computers, working together in meetings, and they weren't just walking around with skirts.
Okay. And did you get some diversity in terms of race, color?
Well, that's another thing. No, I didn't really find that. That is something that needs to be updated and will be in the future. I'm hoping that people are going to be looking for that, and the AI has that in memory, and then that's what it's giving you as a more basic kind of understanding what an office looks like.
Okay, thank you. I'll have to check back with you in a little while, a few years. One question I have, when I see like the cover, when I saw the 2025 cover of Time magazine that showed, the top AI architects of AI, it showed, I think 5 men and 2 women. But when you watch the general, like cable news, and they're talking about a development, or they're talking about how, the Anthropic wanted to pull its contract with the government, or the government was, canceling their contract because of the dangers that they thought the AI was posing. You still see, the only person I see, and this is funny, and she's now got a new kind of show about it, but about AI and how it can make you live longer, and does it work? Things that are new, is Kara Swisher. But why are there so few women that we see? And is it a function of, what is that? How do we explain that?
So it's more like a pyramid right now, where there are a few women at the top, and as you go down lower into middle management, there's a lot more women, and then there's a lot more women beneath that. Um, Unfortunately, that's the way it is right now. And I'm hoping that that structure is going to flatten out so that we're not talking about a pyramid anymore. Although I think in the future, in general, both men and women are going to be managers. And I wrote a blog post about that recently. That the companies are going to need managers to oversee what the AI is doing, and that's going to be a really big job in the future. But it's not necessarily a plum job. It's not like being, the CEO of company. Um, so in that way, it'll be a little flatter. Maybe those bottom jobs for women are going to disappear. I don't know. But yeah, there are certainly fewer women at the top than there are men, and the reason for that is it's a historical thing. Unfortunately, looking back at technology and technologists and who's been hired in the past, it's just the way it is. I'm thinking structurally, though, it's going to be, hopefully, I think it's going to be different this time. It's going to take some time for.
What would you predict that we'd see that change? Are we talking 5 years, 10 years that we'll see?
I would love to say 5 years, but I think in about 10 years.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah. It's the trend now that I'm seeing with the women who are being funded as
Hmm.
as VCs, that's going to help bring that up a lot. But
Give us some. Can you provide some examples, or because generally I think it's like women get 2.3% of funding for from for startups.
yes, but not only that, most of the startups fail. 98% of startups fail, which is a number that no one likes. So that percentage, it gives someone pause when you're thinking about, okay, 2.4% of women in general get VC money, but then they don't make it through. I don't know that percentage of how many women actually make it through. That would be a good number to figure out if there was a way to figure that out. So in answer to your question, like, how do you get to the top? It's going to take a while. That's why I didn't say 5 years. And I said more like 10 years for that to go through. There are a lot more women now who are taking AI as a major, or if it's not available as a major, as a minor in computer science. And that's very, very good. And that'll be very helpful in the future.
Thank you. Some hope, some good hope, some hope. We just, as in everything, we need to be patient. I'm looking at a comment from Lisa Bernard, who's saying that's true for America. In other countries, India and Russia come to mind. Women hold the PhD in tech.
Yes, that's true. In fact, a lot of women in tech in Silicon Valley
Israel too, she says.
They're Indian.
Yeah.
So they're doing very well.
Mm-hmm.
So for whatever reason, I mean, if you're not talking US, if you're talking other countries, they do get hired. It used to be for H-1B. Now they're not going to get hired because of what Trump has done with the H-1B visas, making $100,000 that you have to pay to get someone to work here. But there are many more non-US women in tech and in AI than US women. I think that is actually the case. Yes.
Well, thank you, Lisa, for your comment. And I wanted to ask you what I always ask every guest, which is, Women to Follow is a movement to amplify women's voices. And I always ask my guests to name 3 women to follow. So I would like to ask you, who would you follow and why?
Okay, definitely. I already follow, and I followed for years already, Caitlin Kalinowski. She was, before going to OpenAI, she was with Meta, and she worked on hardware, with augmented reality is the last kind of hardware that she worked with. And then she went on to OpenAI to work with robotics, and she pretty much headed up an area. One really interesting thing about Caitlin is that she recently quit OpenAI because she said that they didn't put enough guardrails on, and they looked like they weren't going to. So she made the decision to quit such a job, which a lot of people would love to have that job. I don't know exactly what she's up to at this moment, but I'm sure that it's going to be something absolutely fabulous because her background is just amazing.
That's great.
Um,
Okay, Amanda Askell.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so title philosopher, right?
Yes, she is a philosopher. She
Mhm.
went to New York University where she got her PhD. She also did some work at Oxford. And she also used to work at OpenAI before going on to Anthropic. So there was a lot of news on her about 3 weeks ago when she joined Anthropic as a philosopher. And Anthropic, as I said, is more careful with the guardrails and safety issues. And she had worked in safety issues and ethics at OpenAI, so she was a very good hire for them. And she's been very much in public. A lot of women are not in public. They, you don't see them. They might work in AI. They might be working middle management. There's some other women that I know that are philosophers working at other companies. One of them at OpenAI. I don't hear about them, in the news. And she actually made the news, like big time. So that's great. And I'd love to see more of that. But I've known about her for years as well. It takes a long time for someone, you don't just get a PhD and then just drop into a job like this. You have to have a lot more background.
Mhm.
It's taken her
Great.
years to get there. And Mira Murati, of course, used to work at OpenAI and it came out with her Thinking Machines Lab. So she is the CEO of this company, and she's gotten a lot of funding for it and is going to get a lot more funding. She's been in the news lately because OpenAI and other companies have poached people back, or for OpenAI, poached them back and poached her people. And Meta has poached a lot of her people because they tried to actually get them in another way and it didn't work. So they actually went out and poached them directly from Thinking Machines. But besides that, I think she has a very strong lead in the company. I think she's doing really well, and I can't wait to see what she comes up with.
Cool. Well, there are certainly 3 women to watch. Those names I've heard of, and we should all watch them. And I hope, the Andrea Askell, that we will see them on our screens as leaders. Because I'm sorry, Amanda Askell.
Yes.
Because I think it's important for girls to see, people who look like them, just as it is in all fields of tech and medicine things. So thank you. If I had to ask you, what takeaway would you give? One for maybe 2 takeaways. One for the future, where we are now and where we're going in the next 5 years with Agentic AI, and then I'll ask you to comment about the future or a takeaway for women to what they should be doing to get ahead in the field.
So for agentic AI, I see this blowing up very, very much. It's not just the new thing; it's the thing that enterprise and businesses are going to be using, and it's got to have a lot more development. It's got to have, there's some safety issues, of course. A lot of people don't want to use OpenClaw because of safety issues. In terms of it could be hijacked pretty easily. It retains all your information, if you put in all your credit card numbers and all this kind of stuff and company information, it retains that, and it could be leaked. So right now we're at a stage where we're pretty much at the start of what agentic AI could do, but it's moving very, very fast. So I wouldn't say that much in the future. Companies, maybe in a year, a lot of them that will be using it, of course, having consulting firms and other people helping them trying to figure out how to use it and how to do it safely. So that's the future for agentic AI. It is as big as operating systems. It's replacing them, actually.
Wow. Thank you. That's really interesting. And I will be watching. And for women in AI, what would you say that they should be focusing on as they, or women who are looking to know more, I guess, in their personal lives and using AI and moving ahead, moving up in the workforce?
So from a consumer standpoint, what I said earlier about not being timid and worry, not even thinking that maybe this won't work, so I won't try it. I think trying, and nobody knows exactly how far you can get with ChatGPT until you actually put the prompt in and try it. You just don't know. So you might be very happily surprised that something that would have taken you a half a day is now taking 4 minutes. So that's my biggest thing for consumer people, anyone, whether they're men or women, to be able to do. In terms of women getting ahead, now it's almost the same answer that I gave a couple of years ago when you interviewed me, in terms of not stopping when things look kind of bad, or difficult. It's more, obviously, it is more difficult for women in tech because there are fewer women. There are fewer managers, there are fewer mentors that are women. And so it's going to be tougher than being a man in the tech world. And that's still the case, obviously, with AI. But I think I'm hoping that this time around with AI, that you're going to get more women, especially as middle managers, which is also really helpful because we don't have that too much right now. And so if you get more women in AI as middle managers, and then they get ahead of that, they get hired to do better jobs as they move companies, I think that's what will happen. So just stick it out. Start in a job that might not exactly be the perfect job that you're looking for. Just get your foot in. And then, as everybody does, they change jobs. So I wouldn't be too timid about changing jobs either. I think in Silicon Valley right now, it's a very usual thing to change a job every once a year. So that's helpful for getting ahead, actually.
Okay. Let's see, a comment from Ingrid in Brooklyn, New York's in the house. AI has been my new addition to troubleshooting some recent challenges and she's making great strides with it. So that's good to hear. Happily surprised. That's good to hear, Ingrid. Well, thank you so much for the wealth of insight you shared with us and keeping us up to date on developments in AI and women's role. And I'll be back with and we'll be following you. And so stay tuned for more. Part of the reason I'm doing this series on women, a series as part of Women to Follow on AI, is to uplift and raise the visibility for women who are in AI and what they're doing. So, Irena, you're a terrific example, and
Thank you.
you've written six books, Infinite Infinite Retina, and you're very active on with your blog with Robert Scoble and your work with Kathy Hackle.
Thank you so much for having me on again.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And stay tuned for more Women to Follow shows. Thank you so much for everybody. And thank you, Stefan, for producing. Thank you, everyone, for your comments and being here. And we'll see you again soon.